Welcome to a Battleship, though that's copyrighted, battle boat fighting game making tutorial. In this portion of it, if you want to check out the other portions, you should look at those videos. And in the descriptions, all the code and the assets. In this portion, we need the enemy to be able to have a turn. Unfortunately, because that means I will have a challenge and not just be able to win. But anyways, we want to make sure the enemy has the ability to take a turn, to select a tile that makes sense, and we want to complete our missile drop, adding a few features to the whole bombing thing. So with that said, let's get going. Oh yeah, that's the game. So now let's go ahead and actually start adding some of the script used to have the missile confirm impact from the enemy. So if the enemy hit our ship, we need to know that. We're going to start off with inside of this, right? So if the collision game object was on the ship, if the item is tagged ship, what are we going to do? We're going to say game manager, which we have access to now. Enemy, and we haven't made this function yet. We're about to. Enemy hit player. And so it doesn't freak out, I'm going to go ahead and comment this out, because again, this function does not exist yet, but we're going to put it here and then go build it out. So target tile location is what I'm going to need. Target tile. And collision dot game object. Now, what these are, target tile location right here is going to be changed and updated by the selection of a tile. The target tile is the integer representation of that, and this is where we actually hit. So let's go take a look at our game manager, and let's add this script so that the enemy can hit the player. Bum, bum, bum. And this will be a public function or method. And game object, I'll say hit object, which will be the ship. And we know it's the ship because of the if statement, which will be here. We doubling up on this. Let's double check something. Oh, yeah. So we're already going to compare the tag there. So we don't need an if here. We know that it is a ship. So enemy script, missile hit, tile number. And we're going to add that function in a moment. What we need to do though now is update our tile. And that's because we are going to instantiate a fire object. So we haven't created this yet. We're going to go put a public fire prefab up at the top right now. And we will do that under our objects. And we're going to use this fire, I'll put it here actually, to, well, represent a hit. Give it a little bit of animation. Perfect. Fire prefab. Now let's head back down here. And that's why we're doing 0.2, is because the size of the fire, you want to push over the tile's Y position a bit, because we're going to use that position to set up our fire's location. And then let's also keep, while we're at it, back and forth, let's also keep a record of the fires that are currently going. And so I'll do that here. And it will be a list of game objects. So that way we can make the fires disappear when it is not the player's turn and when we need other things on the screen. So private list, list game object, and then Player fires sounds good to me. Great. And so now with this, back and forth. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to I'll instantiate and then I'll put it inside. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so what's going on right here is the creation of this prefab, right? We're spawning one where it's going to be located at the tile's location. And this is this identity is just for the rotation. So standard rotation on that. However, we want to go ahead and keep track of this because we're going to need to make it disappear. We're going to hide it when it's the player's turn. And that's because they're going to click a tile. We don't need their ships burning on the map at that point. So we're going to use that list we just made, player fires.add. There we are. And so now we'll add this to the player's fires so we can keep track. And let's go ahead and update the HUD, the heads-up display. So we're going to use the ship script. We're going to say, hey, that thing we just hit, our hit object, our hit object, check if it has sunk. And let's go take a look over here. Perfect. And we'll add that in a second too. So we're working our way through this. All right. And so once we check if it's sunk, what are we going to do? Well, we want to update player ship. So this would only be if it is true, right? So if this if statement is true, if the ship is sunk, we're going to do player ship count minus, and then we're going to update the text on the HUD again. So up once more, we need to add a few things here. So oh, and that's why that's like that player. All right, now to the HUD, we're going to add more text where you need the player ship count and the enemies. So public text. I'm just going to call this player text, I guess. And then public text, enemy text. Maybe I should be more specific. I'm feeling guilty. So I'll say enemy ship text, player ship text. All right. Semicolon here. Boom. A lot of moving parts in this guy. So now we have that set up and we want to update the player count or the player count player ship text. There we are. We're going to grab the text component of that and we're going to set it equal to our variable, which is player ship count to string, because that's an int. There we are. And then finally, we want the enemy's script for syncing the player to execute. So we're going to have a function like so. And then we are going to end the enemy's turn. So I'm going to comment this out because this one we'll get to in a sec. Those other ones we're going to do right away. Enemy turn. I'm going to use invoke on this method because I'm going to make it wait 2 seconds so the player has time to read the screen and see what's going on. So what we should take a look at is building out the enemy script right now. So actually let me capitalize that because the method will be capitalized. And then we'll do check hit sank. So right now I'm headed to the enemy script and we're going to need a few things added. We haven't really done much to this. We're going to use a char array to keep track of the grid that the enemy is using, is looking at, is searching for the player on. It's the easiest way to do this. So char, and I'm just going to call it guess grid because I'm not original. And while I'm here, let's get a few lists. We'll do already guess, potential hits. Actually, let's call it, let's do, we'll do potential hits. These are going to be two lists. So list and potential hits, and then current hits. And as we build this out, you'll see exactly what they are. We're going to need a start function now. Great. And for the current and potential hits, it's just going to be an empty list. Okay. And then the same thing, I'm actually just going to copy and paste for current hits. So 2 empty lists. And then our guess grid, we're going to make a numeral. We're going to use a numeral and fill it with O's for open, because we're going to use this to keep track of, well, the guessing. So guess grid equals repeat, and it's just going to fill it. And this is a 1D array for a reason. It makes the filling of it nice, and it wasn't too bad to manage. How many? Well, we have 100 tiles, and then we need to say to array. Perfect. And so now we have those set up. We're here. Let's go ahead and set up the turn component, and then we'll do the check hit component. It all obviously feeds into each other. So this will be a public void. I'm just going to call this NPC non-playable character turn. And first, we're going to need a hit index list, and I need in a for loop, because we're going to check for already hit tiles. All right, so what's going on here? Well, if we have, I am iterating through the entire list, grabbing any hits and adding it to, iterating through the entire array, grabbing any hits and adding it to our hit index. It's not the prettiest way to do this. After several bouts of frustration with different lists, though, this became the most obvious. And since it's just a single array, it's not terribly inefficient, and it certainly serves its purpose. So with that ready to go, now that we know what tiles have already been struck, now that we know what has been hit, we're going to have the computer make a guess, right? Because it wouldn't be logical to have the computer just randomly guess every time. If they had just struck a tile, if they had just hit a ship, the person or the computer should guess around that area. So since we have those stored now in hit index, let's see what we get. This is going to be the difference between hit index 1 and hit index 0. So we're seeing if there is or how much of a difference there actually is. And keep in mind, we already checked that hit indexes count is greater than 1. So if they have struck a ship, then, and we know they have, again, because of this H right here, that means hit. When a ship has sunk, we replace the H. So we're going to take hit index 1 minus hit index 0 and see the difference. Now we want to check. We want to randomize the guess. So I'm going to use int posneg, and to do this, I'm going to just use random range, And how my preferred way of doing it is we won't even, yikes, what's that doing to me? We won't even need an if statement for this, which is super nice. We're going to do random range 0 to 2. And then what I do is I multiply it by 2 minus 1. And so this means that it could be a 0 here, or it could be a 1, right? It can't be 2 because this is not inclusive. So if it is a 1, well, 1 times 2 is 2, minus 1 is 1. Or if it is a 0, minus 1 would be negative 1. So this will be a positive or negative 1, and that's going to be used for the direction the computer is going to select their guess for. And now that we have that, let's do the next index. So, and this is going to be the hit index plus the difference. Now we want to make sure that the tile that we have picked is open, right, for hitting, because this is going to be where we hit, and we're trying to guess close to what the computer has already hit. So this will be done with a while loop. While our guess grid, which is the array of characters. So while guess grid, and then next index, so the next index that the computer would be guessing, does not equal, and O is the character we autofilled to mean open. So if it does not equal open, we need a new guess. All right, so if M is the char we're going to use for missed, and greater than 100, less than 0, these are kind of false safes to make sure that we aren't off the grid. But then what will I do? Well, I'm going to change difference -1. And that way we can ensure we don't go off the grid and are successful at finding a tile. So now, next difference equals plus equals. And then finally, once we have all that, I could have left it at just next index. I thought guess was a bit more clear. And then what we're going to do is going to use this as a global variable. So guess will be a global variable. Let me pull up here. And we'll leave it empty. And then down here, we can get it defined as the next index. Now, if the hit index is only equal to 1, we don't have a line to follow, right? This is grabbing these two. So if it's greater than 1, then we'll have a line. We know those two dots are next to each other. The ship is in a line. We're asking the computer to follow a line. Now, if we only have 1, we haven't found the next spot or the direction of the ship yet. So this will be a bit different, and this will be the else if. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to be adding to our list -1, 1, 10, and -10. It's a bit of a crude way to do it, but it is a really nice way of getting at what we need. So I'm going to put these all on one line, -10 and 10, and this be 1. And because north, south, east, and west, right? To go north, it would be +10 on the grid. South is -10. Left and right, or east and west, 1 and -1. So that will get us what we need there. And now we're going to pick one of these at random to try first. Since we only have one tile, we'll randomly try one of these. And we're going to select one of those, an index for an item in the list. What we'll do then is make sure it's on the grid. And I just did a Boolean for this because I thought it made it, well, more clear. Oh, before that, actually, let's go ahead and using the index that we just selected, I'm going to use another int. Possible guess would work. And so hit index 0 plus close tiles index. And so what's happening here is the hit index 0, right? The single item that we have struck, I am then going to add to it close tiles index, which was this random, so it's -1, +1, or whatever. Now I need to double check that it is on the grid. So I need to know that it is greater than -1 and less than 100. All right. Moving right along. Now we're going to use another loop. This time we will be using this loop to once again check that the tile is open to guess. So wall, and then what we just did was that on grid. So I want to make sure wall not on grid. So if it's not on the grid, obviously, or if the guess does not equal O, lowercase o is what I used for open. And then we need to make sure closed tiles is greater than 0. And I need to put an and right here. And we're making sure closed tiles is greater than 0 because as we guess from it, we're going to be removing those elements of the list. First off now, so it's either off the grid or it's not open to guess. It might be a miss, who knows, but we're going to reassign random range 0 to closed tiles.count. And then we need to update possible guess. And again, I know it's at hit index 0 because this is only if there's only one. We're checking all the tiles around it for other possible guesses. We should update on grid because we want to check that again. And I did this to just be kind of tidy. I could have put all of this, honestly. Maybe I will. We'll just drop it in. No, I like it as is. Just kidding, because we'll have to negate it. So I think it makes it more clear, especially when learning this. All right, on grid, and then we want to remove what we just guessed. So close tiles dot remove at index. So whatever we just guessed has to go. And we should probably actually put this line first because we know that that index doesn't work. So I'm going to kill that and then do the rest of this. And hopefully that will produce a hit for us. Well, at least a guess that makes sense right around the last hit we had, or the computer had, right? Because this would be if the computer has one hit, it needs to guess around where they already hit. Okay, so with that, we should go ahead now, and after this, we should update guess to be equal to possible guess, because finally we found something that worked. And then we need an else here in case that we have no, so if we have no hits, we can go ahead and let the computer randomly guess. So this is the easiest part of this scenario. And the tiles range, so 0 to 100, because it is exclusive. And then we'll use a wall. I'll do it all on one line. And so next index will be 0 to 100 wall guess grid. Next index does not equal. Oh, I have an extra parenthesis. While it doesn't equal O, we want to do a random range again for another guess. And then we're going to say guess, once that's all done, is equal to next index. All right. So that way, this is a fallback. If we have no hits, then the computer will randomly guess. And now that we have that guess, we want to create a tile game object. And we're going to do this through find and string concatenation. So we know the names of our tile. I'm going to do tile space parenthesis. And what I want to add to this is plus, I'm going to put parentheses for clarity here, guess, whatever our guess number is, plus 1, because our guess number is the index and our tiles start at tile 1, actually. And then plus, and then a parenthesis, semicolon. And what are we going to do now is we need to set our guess grid to miss, because we've guessed it already. And that will be changed if we do have a hit, but this way we don't need to come back if not. So we're going to set that tile on the grid, and keep in mind the grid is the array that we have filled with letters to miss. Now we need vector. And we're going to instantiate a missile. So we needed to change up the Y a little bit to make the missile hit correctly. And this would be an enemy missile, of course. Normally, I would do this entirely through the game manager, but since it is going to be the enemy missile, it makes sense to go ahead and do it through here. So now we're going to need to set up an enemy missile prefab at the top here. And we'll make it public because this is not because the enemy script has an empty, it's not a prefab. So we can go ahead and make that public. And okay, we're going to instantiate that. And then let's go ahead and set the target of it. So and this is going to be added when we build out our missile. Target tile location. We've already added that to our enemy missile script, and we're going to set that equal to that position that we have adjusted. Ooh, that was a bit of a beast. Keep in mind that all of this is linked in the description. Let's go ahead and take care of this set target though. Actually, I lied. What did we originally want to set up here? Missile hit as well. Thankfully, this one's easy. Capital letter, always, always, always. And we have guess from it being a public variable, a global variable. And that way, if there is a hit, we can change it. Remember, we set it to miss automatically. We can change that tile to hit. And then we will be invoking the end of the turn for the enemy. But let's leave that off here for now. Let's go ahead, though, and do sunk player, because that's going to occur if there is a hit, and we'll need it shortly anyways. I'll speed through this then, talk about it. And this is going to run once we have sunk the player, it X's out all those H's so we know to move on. Well, the computer does. I'm going to make sure to hit save on all of this. And let's now go look at this guy, because we want to be able to set the target. Oh, well, yeah, we need public. Set target, boom, boom, and boom. And then we're going to need target tile to be equal to target, and int target is going to be here. While we're at it too, let's go ahead and make sure we destroy our missile upon impact, and destroy game object. Once it hit, we should get rid of it. Okay, what's this grumpy about? Oh, target. There we are. Let me hit save here. And it looks like it's grumpy. I don't know why that just popped up. Did we change? Oh, wait, here it is too. Oh, I put tile. There we are. Let's hit save on all of this. Awesome. All right. Now, let's remember where we were at here. We have check hit sync, and we still will need to add that. We've added these other methods. So to do, do I have an extra? Yep. Okay. And then hit, and this is what we have: set, clicked, rotate, clear tiles. I'll get rid of update and start for now. Okay. And then we're going to need to add a few variables up here. For instance, we're going to need to keep track of hit count. So I'll go ahead and set that to 0, and then we want a ship size, and we want that to be global. I'll leave that empty. I guess I could set it to 0, but it's fine to be undefined. And now let's go ahead and add the hit check. Let's add a few things. What do we have? Set, click, tile, click. Yep. So let's go ahead and do on game board. And then what we're going to do for this is return and this is a check we'll be using in the placement of our ship. There we go. And now let's add that hit. So, and we're just going to increment hit count, and then we want to return if the ship size is less than or equal to the hit count. Because, well, we need to know if the player ship has sunk. And this is the actual ship that will be responding, so it just needs to tell us its size. Perfect. All right. Let's go back here again. This is all looking good. We do need to add the color components that will be changing the tile to mark what has been guessed. I'm going to save it all though. And that's a perfect place to pause and pick it up next time. We will be working with the tiles and making sure we can switch them over to a different color so we can see hits, misses, and guess tiles. which obviously makes the game much more playable. So a bit more scripting and color changes to come. Ba-dum-bum-bum!